There will always be some challenges within the minorities itself.
The first thing that goes wrong and they're like, yalah, minorities are them. Are you just finding something to blame?
Actually, my boss does not prefer to hire Malays. This is something that is internally discussed.
One thing I realized is try not to go against the grain of who you are. Because everyone is racing to be somebody.
Yeah. There is already a barrier that exists where people are not familiar with you, then you have to work even harder to get into those rooms, right?
It just so happens that they are the majority, and so obviously it looks like they have occupied the room.
Welcome back to Pantang, where we discuss things that people don't always talk about out loud.
But here we like to. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about, have you ever looked around and wondered, how does everyone know what they're doing?
Ooh, is it like there's a secret success WhatsApp group, is it?
But we're not in it, why?
Maybe we need to create one. And that's what we are unpacking today, social capital, which refers to the people you know, the opportunities you are exposed to, and unwritten rules that can help open doors.
Joining us today are two people who are possibly in the group chat. We have Fariza, our online big sis energy, who shares thoughtful perspectives on life, career, as well as intentional leaving.
And Fadil, who has been a commercial director for close to a decade, got the wisdom and is now in his mid-career transition. Congrats!
Welcome.
Wow, we really have a powerhouse guest today. Let's get into card level 1, which is perspective.
Card number 1 says, do you think success comes harder for the people in the Malay-Muslim community even when they work hard?
So, yes, generally it is. But I feel that this particular matter, we talk about social capital, it's not an isolated issue. I think around the world, it's the same thing, especially if you're coming from a multicultural, multi-ethnic society. There will always be some challenges within the minorities itself.
Right.
But the question is whether it's intentional and deliberate. But I feel like generally here in Singapore, if there were, it would not have been intentional, rather it is a lack of awareness. So that being said, for minorities in Singapore, I feel yes, that's true.
Fariza, do you think there's a unspoken of caste system in modern society and in Singapore?
And there is this entire phrase or this concept called social capital deficit. If you are the sum of like 5 people you know professionally, who would they be and what kind of rooms can they provide you access to?
I think in any society, there are different groups of people that might have privileges that others don't. I don't know if that is considered a caste system. And I think to answer the first question, like whether the Malay-Muslim community has to work even harder, is it? I don't know if we have to work harder, but I think there are challenges that are very unique to the Malay-Muslim community. It's a very international sort of community that's in Singapore, and I think us being a minority, that it limits our access to certain things because sometimes people prefer to work with people they are familiar with. Like in Chinese customs, there is this term called 关系, which is like it's familiarity and bonding that you have with someone. You take the time to get to know them, to know their language, their culture. And then a lot of businesses, decisions are made outside of the office where you are at dinner tables and that kind of thing. So if there is already a barrier that exists where people are not familiar with you, then you have to work even harder to get into those rooms, right?
Obviously, when there's a majority race, there'll be more of them everywhere. So this is only natural, right? Technically, with every room in any room, everybody is not entitled to it. You sort of pave your way into it or, find a way to get into it, right? Whatever room that you want to get into. So this is true even for people of the majority race. It just so happens that they are the majority, and so obviously it looks like they have occupied the room. Sometimes I feel like, are we quick as minorities to dismiss things that doesn't go our way as, oh, it's because I'm a minority?
I would also want to push further on that. I find personally, like when we are surrounded by the majority, it was also time for me as somebody who was from PMET working in corporate job. I found that I had a chance to shine as a minority as well. So do you think there's two sides of the coin?
We have to first accept there is always strength and weaknesses. We have to recognize that. Maybe I give a very glaring example. There are certain occupations that may deem as taboo for the Malay communities. For example, banking. I was from the bank, and then we talk about riba.
Yep.
interests.
Yes.
To each his own on this particular topic itself, but the more important part here is to understand there are certain industries that, that's a bit tougher for us. I think it's just recognizing that. At the same point of time, there are other industries that we do excel in. So I think it's just a matter of where we know how to fit ourselves in the right environment.
I think when you talk about that, I feel like it's a little bit more towards not so much the opportunity is not given, but as a Malay-Muslim, for example, based on your own cultural beliefs and your own faith, there must be decisions to be made lah. Because technically you can if you want to.
Yeah.
It's just on you, right? Yeah. It's based on your beliefs. It's not that there are limiting opportunities. So I think when we talk about, limiting opportunities, do you think that still exists? I tend to squirm a little bit whenever people, the first thing that goes wrong and they're like, yalah, minorities are them. And sometimes I think about it and I say, are you just finding something to blame?
Even though we try not to make that as like the deciding factor, right? There are a lot of things that you see outside that you can't help but be reminded that you are a minority. Let's say we look at, LinkedIn job posts, right? There are roles where people have shared like, okay, this role has nothing to do with me requiring to speak Mandarin. But then there is a by the way here where if you're able to speak Mandarin, that's a plus.
Yeah.
I literally have friends who are in people and culture or who work in HR in huge organizations in private have told me that actually my boss does not prefer to hire Malays. This is something that is internally discussed. I don't know if it is true, if that is really being practiced, but there are rooms where we are excluded from, where these conversations are happening and we have to be realistic about that, right? So I don't think it's unfair to say that this might be a limiting factor. If you don't get an opportunity, it could be because you're a minority.
Yeah, I wanted to share with you guys.
Yes.
In my first company that I worked at, right?
Okay.
I was the only Malay.
Okay.
See, I'm always the only Malay.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
They call it the token Malay.
Yeah, and I felt like it was
Special.
I felt special at the same time, but then also I had to sort of carry myself.
You feel like you're representing a community.
There is some responsibility there. But the best thing was Chinese New Year, I also don't need to work. That was
Half day.
half day. The half day, I also half day because I also reap the benefits lah. I find that during that time when I was working as well, I realized that I cannot go any further up because it was a Chinese family business. Obviously, I cannot go up that far, right? So those were one of the, points of social capital that were sort of hindering me from progressing, which is one of the reasons why I left. But question to both of you would be, at what point do you realize that success wasn't just about working hard, but also knowing the right people?
I think for me, different stages of my life, I was constantly reminded of it. I think from young, so I was in a class where kids were very motivated, right? So they had access to like piano lessons lah, abacus lah. And I didn't have that because my family didn't have the money for any extra classes. But even though I tried my best to study, do the homework every day, I realized that my friends had advantages that I didn't because they had tips from their tuition teachers. So I'm like, how come I don't get to go? And then I realized, okay, because we couldn't afford it, right? So it's things like that you get reminded every time. But as I got older, it was like, like internship opportunities, where in your final course in uni, people could apply for internships. So people whose parents work in corporate, they would have to weigh in already. You don't have to, look at a list of approved companies and then apply to each and every one of them and hope and pray that, they choose you. Just kind of aware of little things like that lah.
In your experiences, right? Have you ever, especially when you mentioned that in a lot of rooms or, in a lot of companies, you're the only Malay there. Have you ever had any of them said to you, oh, actually, like, you're okay. Like, you're not like the rest of them.
Have passing remark leh.
Right?
Always.
Honestly.
Okay.
Maybe there are certain stereotypes that they already have beforehand.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a pressure on me because, my success I create my own success, right? I create my own path.
I think stereotypes happen not only within racial circles lah.
Of course.
I think
Yes.
within people of different income levels also there are also stereotypes. Have I experienced it? To be honest, yes, but it's quite interesting that you also do get this kind of stereotypes even within your own community that talks about it. For example, one of the common thing, I have a friend who made a joke and said, what is Malay favorite food? Malay. Because Melayu makan Melayu. So it exists generally, I feel, these kind of stereotypes and everything. But at the end of the day, I just feel like it's very important for me to recognize that, you have to learn how to navigate these stereotypes and prove it otherwise.
You see, you always have to prove it otherwise.
Yeah.
If you put the minority bit aside, even let's say in a level playing field, right? Racially, there are also different things that differentiates each people.
Yeah.
When we talk about, the majority race having access or, having connections, but there are also some of them who don't. You know what I mean? So those still exist, and they exist in like multiple layers, right?
That's true. Like, even for growing up with me and my mom, my mother would tell me things like, hang out with the Chinese people because they know how to succeed. And then I started thinking, is this like internalized? Are we also hindering ourselves?
It's quite interesting to talk about it, is that it can be behavioral and internal. For example, one example here is, if you realize this during our primary school days, it is very common for the Malays, their pocket money are given daily. For me, this is my experience.
Okay.
But then, for Chinese, it is very common to be given weekly. And then there's this Malay term called kais pagi makan pagi. So you see, it's behavioral, it's internalized. So you are right in a sense where sometimes it's internalized.
Does this come with like generation understanding as well? Like different generations, they break out of it.
Yes, and I also feel like a lot of it are passed down. Right? Some things you break out of, some things you pass down.
Yeah.
And so it's a build-up, right?
And I think Fariza's mentioned that your mom is in factory working, and my mom was working in a factory, Seagate.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's natural embedded characteristics such as work hard, be loyal to a company, don't quit. It's embedded throughout.
Yeah.
And education seems to me, my family, it's not the center of framing. Working hard seems to be more important than, going for academic, rigor, going to universities.
I think for me, it's like, if anything, education was considered the only way out. And that actually allowed me to network with people who are outside of my immediate circle. Like it opened my eyes to a whole world where there are other families and other people who live very differently from me, and your world really, really expands. And you see, you talked about macam sometimes it's families that are being passed down all these learnings and mentality. If that is all you know, then your world is quite small. So it's like you become limited by that world, right? Only when you get access to other things, where other circles, either through education or networking, then your world expands. But if not, then you will just be confined to that space. And sometimes you can't really blame these people for being in that world, because that's all they know. That's their reality.
Fadil, congrats, you are in your mid-career transition. You've left your management role after many years, and my question would be, what sort of preparations do you take for this one?
Interestingly, I actually expressed the intent to resign in December 2024. So it took me 1 year until I formally resigned in December 2025. I took that whole 1 year to actually prepare myself, firstly financially, because I already knew somewhere, somehow, the job market is going to be a bit tougher. And I've been working for more than close to a decade.
Okay.
And back then, applying for work was just resume.
Right.
But now we have LinkedIn, TikTok, social media. So I know kind of there has to be some form of changes. So I need to prepare myself. So I went for a lot of networking events. I met people. I asked around. I took up job coaches. And this is when we talk about breaking that barrier itself and learning new things. It's very important if you step out of your own comfort zone. And interestingly, what happened was that in one particular workshop I attended was called Sponsors in Tech. So it's a workshop on how to navigate job seeking. I didn't read the details of it. So I went over, I came, and then suddenly the whole room was all females. And then I was like, oh, okay, there's no male. It's okay, I don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't care. I read further about what the organization is about. It's about women empowerment.
Right. Okay.
So like at the point of time, you were looking for information. You're hungry for information on how to navigate.
Yeah.
But this is what I mean when you break the barrier, you put yourself outside of that circle, fish in a different pool, you get to learn something. So one of the things that I learned was out of the job posting that you see, 60% of that job are given to referrals. 40% are broken down into headhunting and then organic application. So count your odds. So at the back of my mind, I'm already stereotyping myself. What are my chances? But that information gave me a little bit of insights. I managed to get 4 interviews.
Okay.
3 is through referrals. Does it mirror to what she said?
Yes.
Right? And 1 was through an organic application that I did.
Wow.
Fauzi, shall we move on to the second question?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Eh.
Now, our second question says, have you ever felt out of place in a professional or social setting?
All the time. I mean, like, my experience was, I was at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. My role was to sort of program manage this particular event. And, you know, this program would invite your chancellors, your vice presidents, like big names. And I was basically running this entire thing. People were struggling to pronounce my name. They didn't know who I was. I was also like struggling to be visible because I was very introverted and very shy. And I realized I was the only Malay-Muslim woman there. But in realizing that, you also realize, wow, I am the only Malay-Muslim woman there. This is an opportunity for me.
Yeah.
What a privilege it is to be here. So I think the moment I switched that mentality from being vulnerable to like, this is my chance, you know, like this is my chance to like own this show, right? I introduced myself, I corrected people when they mispronounced my name, that I was visible, I was available, and I was helpful. In the end, they were like, oh, Fariza, you know, let's connect on LinkedIn, great job.
What sort of benefits do you think we get when we're the only one there?
You get to sort of reinvent yourself because nobody knows you, right? You also get to share a little bit about culture. Like, I think I always like it when people ask me things about the Malay or Muslim like practices because I feel like it comes from a place of curiosity. I think it's a nice opportunity to kind of use that to educate.
It's very relatable because when I was in my 20s, I was so quiet. I didn't want to, connect with people. But army changed me. Because of army, it was a boiling pot of everyone mixed up in one place. It was one of the
Through the
reasons.
same thing.
Yes, it was trauma bonding. That's why it felt like, oh, actually, I have the same opportunity as others. And I also can shine in a way.
I think I have a slightly different take about this.
Go ahead.
Because one thing I realize is try not to go against the grain of who you are. Because sometimes you are putting up a facade that's not truly you. Because one of the things I realize is for you to stand out, is for you to be you. Because everyone is racing to be somebody.
Yeah.
And I was sharing networking session is like a Game of Thrones. Everyone is there to be chosen.
Right.
That is facts.
Right.
Because everyone comes in with an agenda. So the one thing that I learned to hone is to be myself and understand some of the strengths and weakness. And that's important. You need to know your weakness. So one of the things I say, when I go into a room of a networking session, what are my weaknesses? First and foremost, you have to understand that physical appearance is important. I am short, 165. You know, I'm Malay. I'm not naturally someone who comes into a room and get attention. But I also need to learn how to play around that. So instead, I go for the solo game. I try to observe. I look at, okay, this kind of person, he earlier talked about this. I go to that person and I ask questions that will prick him. So you ask good questions, they'll talk more to you and that will land an impression.
I think that's really useful. Especially in a corporate setting, right? Because both of you have been in corporate. In a corporate setting where deals are closed past office hours with alcohol involved, how do you navigate that? Because I think from a majority standpoint, right, sometimes they also feel like, oh, you know, as a Malay Muslim, you can't do this, you can't do that. And to them, it's like, sometimes it's just leceh. Oh, I choose a place, I have to think of you. I think this is still very prevalent in a lot of their mindsets. So how do you navigate that in a corporate setting?
I'll speak from personal experience. So I started out my early days in the advertising industry, so which is famous for parties,
Yeah.
as long as you establish your boundaries very early on and you don't show that you can be bullied or like, where you can change your mind, usually people respect it. I think you also have to ask yourself like, what is important to me? If my batasan, right, my boundaries are very important, I don't even want to be near alcohol, then that's something that you have to communicate. As long as you communicate, the other person then has a choice whether they want to meet you in the middle or don't. If they don't want to meet you in the middle, then find other alternatives in office hours where you can turn that into an official meeting. Some people might even leave the organization because they think there's no way for me to meet a middle ground because it's a culture fit, right? But you have to communicate your needs and wants first for people to respect it.
I want to ask, both Fariza and Fadil, right? What's an opportunity, rule, or lesson that you discovered later in life that you wish someone had told you when you were younger?
Maybe I share again about my experience on navigating job. I learned this through someone who shared with me, and it was during the session that I told you earlier, which was Never Search Alone. When you're building your resume, you have to think of your resume as another person of you.
Okay.
Example, I go for a networking session. I know Fauzi is in the media scene, and I want to land a job with Fauzi. But happens to be that Fauzi doesn't have the opportunity for me. How I have to think it through is that what is it that I want Fauzi to know about me that's so prominent that when Fauzi meets Azura, and then you happen to be, hey, babe, I need someone who's a social media manager. Fauzi will remember me and say, hey, I knew of this guy. And you have to frame that into the resume. Because resume, people are so hard up on creating a fake persona about them. And worst of all, they call it Swiss Army knife. Means your resume says that you do everything. But instead, laser focus and think of the resume as a person.
Wow.
Your clone.
For me, it's wishing that I had started my personal brand or online presence a lot earlier. If you don't advocate for yourself, no one is going to speak up for you. You think hard work is enough. You think your amazing work is going to speak for itself. But it's not enough anymore. People don't only care about the end result. They also want to know the building part of it. They want to know your thought process. They want to know your struggles. They want to know you as a person. I can hire anyone with these skills. I also want to know the personality that I am inviting and building a professional relationship with. For me, it was a mental barrier of like, this is so cringe. Putting myself out there is so cringe. But I think it's like, I just embrace the cringe. It really does get better with practice. Don't wait until you're ready, because when you're ready and you want to talk about yourself, you have not built that practice over the years. You are still going to be awkward when you think you're ready. So might as well just start now.
So after all that talk, right, let's move on to our last question.
Let's go.
What beliefs about success do young people need to unlearn?
I think for me, it's like a degree is not enough. And it's not the only way to success. The assumption is that if you get a university degree, you are book smart, right? It should open doors immediately to like new opportunities.
Yeah.
That is no longer the case.
Yeah.
It is already a basic requirement almost. As you are doing your degree, you already have to acquire other skills outside of your course, to be a multifaceted person, which I think adds so much pressure to the new generation. But yeah, I think that's the reality that we're seeing now.
Can I tell you a crazy story? So we've got an intern with us now, and a while ago I was talking to her and I said, is this something that you want to do, like media, right? And she says, actually I am looking at a completely different industry altogether, but I think I might be too late. I said, sorry, how old are you? And she's like 20, and I'm like, sorry?
Too late for what?
Too late because other people already have experiences in that field, and for them it's already too late. I'm like, sorry? What do you mean?
Wow.
Yeah, and she said, like, as someone who has just come out of school, you are expected to have experience. Yeah, so that shocked me.
So like there are even companies that say, internships are not even relevant anymore. Like I still want someone who has had 1 to 2 years of full-time experience.
But if you've just finished school,
Exactly.
where is that going to come from?
I don't know.
I think maybe like I want to touch on the recent narrative that was, I think, going about in the social media, which was about the HR interview that mentions how candidates need to be hungrier.
How do you weigh that?
I'm 36 this year, been in the industry for about...
Stop it, you look so young.
Thank you. I've been around for, I think, more than 20 years working. There is a little bit of truth in that, hungrier, a little bit. Firstly, hungry is not the right word.
Right.
It's drive.
Right.
Okay. However, that was an outdated truth. This drive was a thing before COVID. And I always say this, when the level playing field is flat, everyone can run the same lane. That's where drive can occur, you know, but after COVID, I think there's a lot of disruption. I think one of the things that for the younger generation to understand that drive is not the only factor. And I have experience, I think you're a business owner to know this, that I've seen people who have drive and they just break easily because they don't understand how to learn when they fail and they don't see that all this leads to success.
So they lack in resilience.
They lack resilience. So I think what is important now is to be innovative. You have to be creative in how you navigate job. And the evidence here is in AI. AI is a byproduct of innovation.
Yeah.
That is a signal for you. And I always share, for example, if you're not an outgoing person per se, and you're too shy to go for a networking session, I have seen creative people who went on TikTok and showed their resume. If I'm a business owner, I would want to meet that person.
Right.
Because I want to know what's running in your mind.
For you to do that.
Of all the 6 million people in Singapore, you decided to just do that short 5 seconds, there must have been something in you, right? I think this is one of the key factor other than having drive itself. And more importantly here is the world favors the bold. If you're courageous enough, you'll always get somewhere.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So insightful today.
So as a closing question, right, just for us to think about, you know, for both of you, right, if social capital is about passing opportunities forward, what kind of legacy do we want to leave behind?
Build bridges and not cliques. Don't fish in the same pond.
Yeah.
If you talk about breaking the social barriers, right, you really need to expand your circle. Sometimes you need to overlap with other communities. So it cannot be within your own circle. You're just building internally, but you're not building externally. Go out of the mentality of Kampung Melayu. I think create more kampungs of people of different ethnicities, different sectors, different industry.
Or even create your own community, like for yourself.
correct.
I literally follow you because I felt like a lot of things you share were relatable on social media. Thanks for that.
What would your advice be?
I think it's like beyond like networking, you know, vertically, right? Speaking to people who are more senior. Don't forget to also network laterally to look into peers, especially if you're in the younger generation, right? You forget that your peers will eventually become heads of department, CEOs and whatever. If you invest in these professional relationships early, they remember you. You know, they remember working with you years back and you're like, hey, I have this opportunity 10 years later. Want to work together again or not? Yeah, why not? You know, I personally am experiencing that now as a business owner. I think that's something that you don't actively remember, but I think it's good to take note.
We definitely learned so much today. And I really think we should set up that WhatsApp group chat.
Can.
So maybe success isn't about having all the answers. Sometimes it's all about, you know, having your own courage to step into rooms you've never been before.
Yeah, and if nobody showed you the way, that doesn't mean you're behind. You just have to be the first one to figure it out and pave your own way, right?
Yeah, and you keep asking questions, you show up, put yourself in uncomfortable situations maybe.
Yeah, and then when you get through that, they'll hold it open for someone else.
Of course. So thanks for hanging out with us at Pantang.
Thank you. We learned so much from you
guys.
today.
Yes.
And see you.
See you. Bye-bye.